Well, have you ever got up in the morning and you just feel off? Something has got you off the station, and it feels like today very well could go sideways. Or at the very least, it's going to feel like one of those contested days, a day that you're going to be fighting obsessive thoughts all day. I think we've all faced mornings like that. Today, I want to ask you a question for this podcast. The question is this: are you dialed in? So welcome aboard to Finding Traction.
Ready?
When it comes to porn, are you stuck, spinning out, or slipping backwards in your life? If so, then welcome to the Finding Traction podcast, a show dedicated to those who are looking to gain recovery momentum away from porn and toward the life and relationships they have always hoped for. Now, here's your host, Vern Tomke.
Well, if you've been listening to this podcast for any period of time, you've probably heard this idea of a circle learning platform that all my material is on. And let me just say, both of my podcasts are on there. You can access them, but there's a whole lot more types of help that you can get access to. There is a whole bunch of planning worksheets there. There's information on groups. You can watch the very first lesson of the Finding Traction course. And there's just, again, a lot of ways that can help you, again, give you traction as you move towards your recovery. There's also information there about the video course called Finding Traction. It's a video course that I developed for your first full year of porn recovery. And I've had guys do that individually, or guys do that together with a group of 2 or 3 other guys. Maybe they're accountability buddies. I've also had people do that in groups. I lead groups every week in the Finding Traction course. And if that interests you, you can also get together with me. Presently, we've just started a new group, Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. And we're working through the Finding Traction course together. So all of those are ways that you can get help in this journey. If you want to talk to me, if you want to reach out to me, or you even want to set up a free Zoom call with me, then email me at bandofbrothers.care@gmail.com. I'd love to chat with you. All right, let's get back to this question. Are you dialed in? Now I want to make use of a metaphor that might be before your day. It's the idea of a transistor radio, or the old version of clock radios. These were analog and they had dials, and what you could do is, as you turned the dial, the needle would move from left to right or right to left across a frequency spectrum, and it would dial in to certain and different radio stations. Some of you still might have that if you have an older car, for example. Now, with digital, of course, it's different because it's just digital. But the funny thing about these analog radios is that you had to be right on the station to get a clear and consistent signal. You could be just off the station, and it would be fuzzy. It would kind of come in and out. Or sometimes you would even get another station that was partly coming in as well. You'd almost have like 2 stations at the same time. And that's a metaphor I want to use as to getting up in the morning and you're going, okay, where am I at in terms of the station this morning? Is my recovery, am I on the recovery station loud and clear? And some days I get up and you know what? I'm on the station. My motivation is strong. I feel strong. I feel secure. Even if opportunities to edge or things came up, I would probably just go, nah, that's not the life I want. But other days it's different. It's like somebody came in the middle of the night and they messed with the dials. And this morning I wake up and I feel wobbly. or I'm struggling with obsessive thoughts, or I just feel off, or I go, oh no, it's going to be one of those days. And this is why I want to talk about the practice of dialing it in, changing the knob slightly so you are on the station loud and clear. Now, I'm not talking about only doing that on days where you feel off, because if you only wait till you feel off, it's going to be too late sometimes. On days that you feel on, you still practice this so you have a higher chance of staying on for the rest of the day. Some of you might have had the experience where you got up in the morning and go, I'm good, but afternoons came along or something happened and all of a sudden you find yourself off in the weeds going, how did I get here? But there's something about mornings. Over and over, my guys have said, and you've probably noticed, and I've noticed, the way I start my day has a huge effect on how my day goes. You know, that old thing, snooze, you lose, is interesting because if I get up I don't get up, I lay in bed and I hit the snooze button a whole bunch of times, then, you know, I feel like I've not got off to a good start of my day. Hey, by the way, talking about snooze buttons, I heard this little practice a little while ago, and they talked about putting your phone or your alarm clock. I'm not sure who has an alarm clock other than their phone these days, but they talked about putting it across the room or somewhere you can still hear it, that maybe next to a sink. So what happens is when it goes off, you have to get your feet out of bed, you go over to where the sink is, and you turn your clock off, and you immediately splash your face with some cold water. And I would probably say then pop a Tic Tac or something to say, yes, I'm up, just to give yourself that morning routine. So it starts by getting out of bed. Now we'll go to the night before we end this podcast. But for now, we're just talking about you're up. Your feet are out of bed. You now didn't hit the snooze 3 times. You're off to a good start. You're on a roll. Okay. So for me, that often means, have my first cup of coffee. That is like a religious experience for me. Have my cup of coffee. Now, what are the dials that you need to practice to get your day off to a good start? Well, the first one I would say, I have a few dials. You might modify this to fit with your perspective, but these are some of the dials that I practice. The very first dial that I practice is my coffee dial. My second dial is, I'm just going to call it my God or spiritual dial. And that is where I will, for example, I have a Bible app on my phone and I'll just read some scriptures. Now, everyone's different. Some people just like reading a few verses and thinking about them and then writing a few notes. Other people like reading through the Bible in a whole year, for example. And so different ways you can do it. There's all sorts, if you have like a Bible app, there's all sorts of different individualized plans and programs you can do or look at. Here's an interesting thing that somebody told me recently. They say, I start my day with such good intentions. I sit in my chair. I have my coffee. Okay, everything's good so far. I pick up my phone. And before I start in with this God or spiritual dial, what I do is I make the mistake of checking out the news. And before you know it, I've spent 15 minutes scrolling through the news. Or I've checked my emails. Or I check my bank balance. Some version of that trips guys up all the time. And I would say this, if you find that you end up picking up your phone and actually not using it to dial in this dial, then I would say, here's an idea. Why don't you try something more paper-based? You know, they made a few Bibles since Gutenberg originally printed one. If that is a consistent problem, one guy this last week I tried it with, he said, you know what? I was able to be way more focused, way more centered. I read a paper version of the Bible and I wrote down some notes. And it's like, wow, amazing, right? A simple little hack like that affected his starting the day in that way. Now, some people may not have such a overtly spiritual approach. Their version of getting started in the day is to connect with things like meditation or affirmations. There's a great book out there called Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod, and he talks about doing things such as affirmations and visualizations and silence. And so however you nuance that, the point is you're starting your day by getting centered. You're starting this day by identifying with your deepest reasons for your deepest values for who the person is you want to be. Now, the second dial that I practice is what I call my recovery dial. And I would do this probably 4 or 5 times a week. Certainly during the weekdays, for me, it's pretty common. Weekends there's a little bit of a different thing I'll do, but during the weeks, I'll go for a walk and I will put on a recovery podcast. And, there's probably 4 or 5 ones that I'll listen to. I'll listen to Porn Free Radio or Pirate Monks or Pure Desire or Pure Sex Radio or Husband Material or there's different ones that will catch my fancy. Now, let me just say this about podcasts. Now, for you, it might not be podcasts. Maybe you just have a really good recovery book, and after you're done with your God dial, you pick up a book like Unwanted or Surfing for God, or there's some great recovery books too. So whatever works for you. But what you're doing here is this. I sometimes joke, I says, well, I get up and the first thing I do is I kind of ask God, do you still want me to not look at porn? Because I really, could go back to that very easily. And usually the answer is pretty clear in a short amount of time of reading. Yeah, that's still the pathway that he's designed for me. It's like, okay. But then I ask the second question is, but do I still want this? Because there's a part of me that really misses, some of those old roller coaster exciting emotions I used to experience in porn. And usually this is where the recovery podcasts come in. It's a chance for me to go, you know what? That's right. Yeah, that's right. That's right. This is what I still want. That's why I still want it. This is how I need to go about this day. This is a practice. This is something that's going to help me today. Now, don't get caught up, and I see some guys getting caught up in this kind of head game. I listened to that and there really wasn't anything new. Or, he wasn't saying anything I hadn't heard before. Guys, if you listen to me for any period of time, you're going to go, does Vern have anything unique to say? I mean, I thought I had something really unique a year or two ago, but then I realized maybe it was from somebody else. There's really nothing new under the sun. And if you're listening to come up with some strange new insight that's going to unlock recovery for you, you're going to be disappointed. Why I listen to podcasts and why I encourage you to listen to podcasts is simply to be reminded and to be encouraged. Yes, this is the path that I want for my life. Yes, this just reminds me, this is a good path. This is how I stay on it. So I call that the recovery dial. Now, associated with that, and you could associate that with the first one, the spiritual dial or the recovery dial. For me, it's just a specific dial I use. I call it my gratitude dial. And almost every morning I get up, I go for a walk, and I practice a little bit of a gratitude exercise. And it kind of fits with the first 2 dials here. And I just go through, and you've heard it before, and I just practice this gratitude exercise where I go, I am so glad for what my recovery has brought and brought me. And I go through, I'm experiencing freedom, not captivity. I'm experiencing hope and not despair. I'm experiencing clarity and not confusion. And I just go through about 7 or 8 of the different examples. I'm experiencing confidence and not feeling insecure. I like this life. I like this life, this porn-free life, and what it has bought and brought me. And that's a dial that I will practice almost all the time. Now, another dial that you need to practice, and if you go back and you hear the one rule to rule them all, you will know that I say that you have to regularly practice the people dial. And the people dial is specifically where you are saying, I need to connect with somebody today about my recovery. it has a double purpose. Not only does it encourage me, but it encourages them. I know with all of our groups, we have all of our guys on WhatsApp, and our guys encourage each other throughout the day. Somebody might put on in one of our groups, man, I'm really struggling today, or this happened, or I had a fight with my wife, and it's a chance to encourage them. Other guys, they will use the WhatsApp group as a start, and they'll say something like, hey, anybody up for a call today? And they'll just check in with each other, perhaps on the phone. Now, you'll remember, if you've been listening to me for any period of time, I say this. If you haven't experienced, I forget if I use 30 or 60, I like 60, but even 30, if you haven't got to the point where you're experiencing at least 30 days, porn-free days, then you need to talk to somebody every day, engaging with somebody every day, because that's the only thing that's going to break you out of the isolation in your life. So that would be another dial that I would say you have to practice on a regular basis. Now, I want to end by asking this question. What is standing in the way of you starting your day like that? Well, you could say, well, one of the reasons I have a hard time is that I was myself messing with the dials and I was playing with other stations, right? I was edging, or deliberately inviting static into my brain. Okay, well, that is going to mess with being on, the station loud and clear. So if you are in a pattern of edging, it's going to be hard for you on any morning to find a clear, consistent station, because you're just going to be remembering things you saw yesterday. And so that's that second rule I gave about removing porn-adjacent behaviors from your life. I think I've given the Arab proverb before, if you allow the nose of the camel under the side of your tent, pretty soon the whole camel will have moved in, right? So that might be messing with your ability to start the day in a clear and consistent way. But others are, I don't know if they're more subtle, they're certainly more practical. And you got to forgive me if I sound a little bit like your mom here. But one of the things I will say to guys, and guys will describe, boy, I had such a hard time getting out of bed this morning. I had such a hard time dialing it in this morning. And they'll, as we're talking about it, it's obvious the reason is because they're not getting enough sleep. Now, I know, again, I'm sounding parental here. And then the question is, well, why didn't you get enough sleep? And if you didn't get enough sleep, it's probably, now this is not rocket science, it's because you probably didn't go to bed early enough. And then the follow-up question to that is, and this is really sounding like your parent, well, why didn't you go to bed early enough? Well, I was up playing video games, or I was up edging, or we just ended up talking and I got to bed at 1 a.m, or whatever, right? Or here's another one. This is why I think all of you should move to the West Coast, is because you notice how sport events, they always end early on the West Coast. But as you get into hockey season and playoffs, some of the games end at 11 and 12 at night, right? And I was up late watching, the game, as an example, right? So I think it's just an example of how you sabotage your early morning success by not thinking through the night before. Go, what do I need to do? And it's not a sleep. You don't need to be a sleep expert to go. The more you go to bed at a set time, and the more you get up at a set time, not just during the week, but all the time, the more your body adjusts and the more rested and refreshed you feel in the morning. Some guys need good 7 hours. Some guys need 8. I need at least 8 hours of sleep. If I get 9 hours of sleep, I know my prairie farmer roots would, go crazy. If I get 9 hours of sleep, man, I'm rocking it in terms of the next day. But even 8 hours for me is a great amount of sleep. Now, where does that set in? Well, some guys I know, for example, they'll have to make, just like they plan to, use a paper Bible. I'll say to people, maybe what you need to do is you need to turn off all your internet after, let's say, 9 o'clock. Even, I know with my PS4, I'm a big Ghost Recon guy right now. If my internet's not on, I can't play my game. And that's just a part of the way it goes. So maybe that's something you need to do. So for whatever reason, I want to come back to this question. Are you dialing it in each and every day? Or are you jumping from station to station, simply hoping to stumble into recovery? We'll see you next time.